Well, you asked for it, and she's back. Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, has rejoined us after several weeks away. She's with us each and every Thursday, right through until Christmas now, to offer her legal expertise. She provides some general advice on the latest hot topics. She has experience that spans more than 25 years in the area of property and commercial law. She also prepares wills as part of estate planning and litigation. Morning, Despina. Welcome back.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Brooke. Thank you. I'm very happy to be back today.
Woo! A 4-week break and a lot has happened.
Mm.
But one particular story we're going to focus on this morning is a suspicious fire that broke out at a shopping centre in Ashmore, Queensland, just last week. Investigations are still ongoing, but Despina, you have some interesting points to raise for business owners and tenants of this property.
Yes, so a lot's happened in the last 4 weeks, surprisingly so, and there's a lot to cover, between now and Christmas. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about straight away today was a recent story, only happened last week, as you said, and it hit the headlines, of course. And we want to talk about things that affect local people here on the Gold Coast. And it was brought to my attention because I have a client who unfortunately now has suffered a loss. She has a particular shop at the Ashmore Plaza Shopping Centre. And that's the centre that we're talking about. And that centre, people might have seen on the news last week, was actually bombed. So not the whole centre, but a particular shop, and I think it was the tobacconist shop that actually was bombed. And it was done purposely, as I understand, from what is being reported on the news. So what's actually happened as a result of that bombing for one particular shop is that the whole shopping centre has been shut off. And that's been a decision made by the landlords. And that means that anybody else within that centre cannot utilise their premises, even if their shop was not actually damaged to the same extent or at all. You've now got the whole centre barricaded and people can't use it. Obviously, customers can't come in, and people who own those businesses there cannot actually operate and utilise those premises. So my client is a tenant in one of those shops. She doesn't own the premises, and she rang me about this and she said, what do I do? And I thought, well, and I gave her advice, of course, and we want to talk about some of the things that tenants would need to do. And it sort of came to mind that, well, what if there are other people out there that are suffering at the moment as a result of this bombing, or maybe have been in a similar situation where all of a sudden there's been an event unforeseen, unpredicted, of course, and has now created as a consequence, a problem for their business. It's been shut. They can't utilize it. They can't open. They're losing income, profits. What do they do?
Yep, because of course we're talking about this particular example, but yeah, it could be any business anywhere at any time with factors beyond the control of the owners, and so many people will have to deal with issues just like this.
Exactly right. So, and what do you do, and what are the things that you should do straight away? So, obviously, if you're in premises, it's governed by your lease. And your lease document is most important. So anything that happens in relation to your lease premises, a dispute with the landlord, or in this case, the premises might be damaged or destroyed, maybe a little bit, or maybe the whole premises are damaged or destroyed by an event. Or anything else, you go to what's in your lease. That is paramount. And when I had a look at this client's lease, there obviously is a clause in there, like all leases, about, well, what happens if the premises are damaged or destroyed? And it's typically found in every single lease, whether it's a retail shop lease, as these premises are in Ashmore Plaza, or whether it's a commercial lease. So when you go to the lease, that's number one step. What does the lease say? And in this case, the lease does have a clause, and it's how the clause is worded. Some of these clauses about damage or destruction can be quite long and arduous, and they go on for pages. And sometimes it's just a small paragraph. So in her lease, it was a small paragraph. But essentially, the nuts and bolts of it is for her is that, well, the rent and the outgoings that you normally pay, on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, that is now suspended. Okay. And that makes sense, doesn't it? It would be extremely unfair that the landlord can continue to demand payment of rent and payment of outgoings when the premises are shut, nothing to do with the tenant, it wasn't the tenant's fault. Someone's come along and bombed it or destroyed it somehow. And the same thing could happen if the tree fell on the outside of the premises and destroyed, the shop front. So go to the lease. So the lease says the rent and outgoings are stopped. Then for how long? So then you've got the next part of the clause, and it always depends on the wording. But essentially, there's provisions that typically will say, well, the landlord can go about rectifying and remedying that damage and getting the premises reinstated so it'll be fit for purpose and fit for use. But then it always goes back to the wording. How long will that take? Does the landlord have a positive obligation? Is it mandated? And most leases say the landlord is under no obligation to reinstate at all, and the landlord can make a decision whether they reinstate or not. So the tenant sometimes is sitting there waiting for the landlord to make a decision. And you say, okay, well, they don't have to pay rent and outgoings, but at the same time, they're losing their customers, they're losing their income.
Yep.
Yeah, and it could have a devastating effect on the business. So yes, it does matter what's in your lease. So go and meet the landlord straight away, discuss what's in your lease, put it on record. So if the lease says the rent and outgoings are suspended, great, put it in an email, send the email to the landlord. The landlord will probably send you a letter. This is what's happened at the moment. The second thing to do is, if you have business interruption insurance, right, as this client does have, that she explained to me after I asked her, then go and contact your insurer, potential lodgement of a claim there, depending on what your insurance policy says, as to what is a business interruption. What's the event that it's an insured event? Is it an event outside of your control, like this one, a bombing? And are you insured? And if you are insured, up to what value? Okay, so in her policy, I think it was up to 50,000. But as I said, the insurance company will want you to justify and quantify your losses. And your losses can't be quantified, strictly speaking, until you know how long the premises are shut. Yeah. So there's a few things to do. And this is a body corporate at Ashmore Plaza. So the other thing to do is to make sure the landlord gets in touch with the body corporate. Maybe there's an insurance claim that the body corporate is also having to lodge, because if there's things shut off like electricity, which I believe there was and is at Ashmore Plaza, and other infrastructure, it might be that the body corporate has a responsibility to lodge an insurance claim as well. So there's a few things there for the tenants to know about. And the most important thing is, if you are in this unfortunate situation, to go and get legal advice straight away, get your lease out, read the damage and destruction clause. Every lease has one. And hopefully it's a pretty good clause, but stay on top of the landlord. And obviously the landlord is suffering as well. Maybe not as much as what the tenant is, but the landlord will be onto this hopefully pretty quick. And the other thing, of course, to do is, if you actually own premises and you're not a tenant, and you've got a mortgage taken out, you really need to contact your bank, because your bank will need to be made aware of the premises being damaged or destroyed, because that will have an impact.
Is there a sort of time frame that you could look at something like this? I mean, are we talking about weeks or months? I mean, how long could this go on? I guess it varies from incident to incident, doesn't it?
Well, that's right. So in this particular lease for my client, it's up to 3 months. So it says there, by the end of the 3 months, if the landlord hasn't decided to reinstate the premises and fix it and, reopen, actually either party can terminate.
Right.
Okay. Yes. So that's really important. And rights of compensation, well, this is the next thing. So when you have a situation like this, there's no direct right of compensation under the Retail Shop Leases Act in Queensland. However, if the landlord in the end makes a decision that the whole shopping centre is going to be demolished and rebuilt because the damage is so extent, there is the possibility of compensation. So you're sitting around and you are waiting for the landlord to make a decision, and you are in the hands of the landlord, unfortunately, and hopefully you've got a reasonable landlord. But when you've got a situation where here the landlord's made a decision, I'm going to shut the centre off, Some premises might not have been affected as badly as others, but the landlord has a right to do that in response to an emergency situation. And in that case, if the landlord's acted reasonably, in that situation, the right of compensation is not there. So it's a matter of sitting and waiting, making sure the landlord's doing the right thing by your lease, as a tenant, and going and get legal advice, talking to your insurance company, particularly. And if you're not a tenant and you happen to own one of those premises and you are a landlord yourself, definitely contact your bank, because they'll need to be aware of that as well.
Definitely. And fingers crossed, everyone at Ashmore Plaza gets through this fine and businesses can recoup, because I'm sure your client is sitting on the edge of her seat at the moment.
Well, yes. And look, it's a very old shopping centre. So there's probably an argument there that maybe the landlord will use this as an opportunity to just revamp the entire centre anyway. So maybe the long-term, there'll be long-term gains there, for maybe it'll be more beneficial. Maybe it'll be brightened up. Maybe it'll be brand new building. That might be better for the tenants. But the short term is going to be hard.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for that information, Despina. And for our listeners on both sides of the border, if you're interested in buying a duplex, it's a case of buyer beware with this case coming up with Despina. Stay tuned to Talking Law on Radio 97.
Are you confused about legal jargon? Do you need legal advice but don't know where to turn? Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97. Despina, a leading lawyer with over 20 years of experience, will demystify the law and provide practical advice to help you navigate legal issues. Whether it's a family matter, a property dispute, or a business concern, Talking Law has got you covered. Don't miss out on this valuable resource. Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97.